thanks again for coming. I just want to introduce Brad Rossin at OSPCD.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, and thanks to Jennifer, who's my right-hand person on the mayor's staff for transportation planning issues. As we know, I'm a Somerville resident. Jennifer's a Somerville resident. You folks live here in the corridor, whether it's on the Cambridge side of the border or the Somerville side of the border. We're dealing with a really special moment in Somerville's history, and a really challenging one, frankly. Public works projects that perhaps should have been done 40 years ago are now kind of all colliding at once. Beacon Street's under construction. The MWRA is doing a water main replacement down in Union Square. We're trying to do sewer separations in Union Square to deal with flood mitigation. We've got 100 other important projects, and for folks in this part of the city, you're feeling it in particular. So we appreciate your patience, we appreciate your perspective, we appreciate you serving as our eyes and ears. I want to give shout outs and credit to MassDOT, to Rich and the team from District 4. They've been awesome project managers, they've been awesome partners for the city of Somerville. And I mean, anybody who remembers last fall when you were raising questions to us, how in the world are we going to get through a winter until the big Beacon Street construction starts with that awful moonscape craters of a pavement surface? These guys went to bat and figured out a way to do a quick overlay of pavement just to make sure that we can get snow plows down the roadway last winter. Now, of course, we didn't need them, but still, again, MassDOT has been awesome partners for us on this project and on so many others. Wayne Kiefner from Design Consultants, a Somerville-based company, has been the engineer of record and is doing on-site field engineering as the city's agent and owner's representative on the job. Wayne, like me, is a new father, and really appreciate you being here, Wayne, just a few days out from the hospital, and all the best to you and your family. And Steve Berry, of course, from Newport. These guys have been really bearing with us through some unforeseen circumstances. We had laid out to you all through a variety of mechanisms and media a preferred project schedule, and just like these projects always go, the moment you say, here's our schedule and proposal, that's when things start to unravel. The gas company told us about some issues that they had with their utilities that are not proprietary information that don't always become available easily to the engineering team, and we've had to make field decisions. We appreciate everybody's responsiveness and patience throughout that process. Let me acknowledge Mary Ann Houston, a great Ward 2 alderman from the city of Somerville, Beacon Street resident, a longtime advocate. She's been fighting the good fight for longer than the 9 years that I've been here to make sure that we get safe, accessible, quality conditions, not just on our roadways, our parks, our public schools, our economic development. So Mary Ann, thanks for being here, appreciate it. So Rich DeSantis from MassDOT is going to do the heart of the presentation. We know that short presentations and more conversation is always better. So Rich has got 12 or 15 minutes worth of material. Jennifer and Adam from my staff will be doing some recording. We want to try to co-locate questions whenever possible, rather than dealing with one subject area over here and then having 10 minutes of another subject area and then jumping back to the same stuff that we dealt with. So if you have questions, you got those Post-it notes, you can write them down. Jennifer and Adam can try to organize them so we can frame responses in a way that respects your time the best. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Rich DeSantis from MassDOT. Thanks, guys.
Hi, thank you all for coming. I'm Rich DeSantis. I'm the Assistant Construction Engineer, District 4, MassDOT. And I'm going to give you a quick 12 to 15 minute presentation, just going over some of the basics. Hopefully it'll answer some of your questions in advance, but afterwards we're all available for questions and answers. So this is the reconstruction of Beacon Street in Somerville. And project length is 1.15 miles, and it goes from Rollston Street, that's at Oxford Street, to the Cambridge City line at Dixon Street. Design elements include new full-depth roadway, sidewalks, cycle track, drainage improvements, concrete pavers, crosswalks, street lighting, street traffic signal installations, curbing, landscaping, and streetscape items. Construction started in May 16th of 2016, and completion is scheduled for September 16th of 2017. And we are still on track for that, hopefully, and estimated cost is $11 million. The project construction team consists of the Mass Department of Transportation, the City of Somerville, the contractor Newport Construction of Nashua, New Hampshire, the consultant Design Consultants, Inc. of Somerville, and we also coordinate with the City of Cambridge because Cambridge is right on the just on the side of Beacon Street, so a lot of the roads that lead into Beacon Street are City of Cambridge streets. This is Beacon Street pre-construction. It was a mess. Many utility trenches, traffic, just worn-out pavement. We actually had to do a skim coat resurfacing of this road last fall. We were concerned that the street wouldn't even make it to the winter. As you can see, there's no reveal on the curb, and this is the old Beacon Street.
Rich, just so you folks know, curb reveal, that's the elevation. of the
Yes,
curb, right?
that's the elevation between the sidewalk and the roadway. We try to get 6 inches. Less than that, and cars will drive up on the sidewalk. This is Beacon Street today, as you can see, under construction. Kind of a mess, but, you know, you have to go through this step to get to the new Beacon Street. And that's what it will look like a year from this fall. And we're on track for that, and as you can see, you got the cycle tracks, you got the new sidewalks, landscaping, new pavement. It'll look nice when we're done. Okay, the roadway reconstruction. We're going to be doing 3 layers of pavement, 8 inches total, placed over a layer of dense graded crushed stone and gravel subbase. The roadway reconstruction is being done in 4 phases. Section 1 goes from Roseland all the way to Sacramento Street, which is at the Star Market. We're going to be paving that next week. Section 2 extends from Sacramento Street to Park Street. That's the section that's currently dug up, and we'll talk more about that paving coming up. Section 3 is Park Street to Calvin Street. That's just past Washington. And the last section goes from Calvin Street all the way to Dixon Street at the Cambridge City line. At some places, we had to have the excavation actually go deeper than we thought because there's a lot of bad material out there. Some of the existing subsurface is clay, and when you drive on the gravel out there, you can see the rutting. That's the poor material under there. We've got to chase that out of there. So next, Section 1, Roseland to Sacramento, gets paved starting Monday. Section 2, which is Sacramento Street to Park Street, we're hoping to pave that the first week of September. There is some utility work by Eversource Gas that has to be done first, and then we can do, Newport can do their work. But yeah, we're thinking the first week of September. And with a little bit of luck, we're also going to get Section 3 done, which is the Sacramento past Washington to Calvin. That's on schedule to be done this fall. We're not going to excavate that section until we pave all the way up to Park Street. Once that is paved, then we'll take out the next section. And that's as far as we're going to get this year. The last Section 4 will be done next spring. There's some indications of our deep drainage. That is going down to the existing sewer trunk line that is at Oxford Street. Drainage construction was needed to accommodate the new roadway layout. We're adding a cycle track, we're changing the curb lines, we're doing sidewalks, so we had to switch some of the drainage around. At Oxford Street, we actually went down 24 feet to access the existing sewer. And then all over the job, we had to do numerous field changes because there were utilities everywhere. There's shallow gas, there's utility trunk lines, there's everything you can imagine. So a lot of changes were made on the fly. DCI was very helpful in that. And it complicates construction, but we're working through it as best we can. We are keeping access to all the butters during construction. So even if Beacon Street is closed, you can get to your houses. That's never going to be an issue. If you see the cop, the policeman at the at the start of the closure, just tell them that you live there and they will get you through. We are putting signs up noting local businesses open during construction. We want to make sure people understand that even though the street is under construction, the local businesses are open. And we do have numerous detours set up. Upcoming construction schedule. We're hoping to finish the drainage this year. Like I said, Section 3 is going to be complete this fall. And we're going to start sidewalk and cycle track construction in September, once we pave up to Park Street. Sidewalk's going to be done one side at a time. We're going to make sure that one side is open and not under construction. But even when the sidewalk is being reconstructed, we're going to have access to all the houses. That'll be maintained at all times. Subsurface utility relocations. Eversource Gas found out that there is a number of shallow gas lines out there coming off an old 20-inch cast iron gas main. So that is the work that they're doing. As you can see them out there, they're relocating all their gas services. That has to be done before we do our paving, because we don't want them cutting into our new pavement. So they're working their way down the street, and we're chasing them with our pavement. There's also new utility poles going out. We have to put 39 new utility poles out. NSTAR Electric is doing that work. That work should be starting shortly. Once NSTAR sets the new poles, NSTAR Communication, Comcast, and Verizon, they have to transfer the overhead lines to the new poles and remove the old poles. And of course, that work has to be coordinated too with our work. Besides that, there are numerous developments on the street that are getting their utility work done prior to our construction, and that work needs to be coordinated into our schedule too. So it's pretty complicated as all these things try to mesh together. So we do have vehicular and bicycle detours in place. The current vehicle detour goes down Somerville Ave to Park Street. Vehicle access is maintained for abutters. Pedestrian accesses to all residents and businesses will be maintained during construction. And we also have bicycle detours set up. This one takes you from Porter Square to Inman Square and reverse. You can still take a bike down Beacon Street, but it's kind of rough, so my suggestion is not to, but people do. We are also doing construction mitigation measures. We are doing a rat control, rodent control program. Baited traps are set up project-wide, they're monitored. So far, we haven't seen any activity, but we are checking it. Sometimes subsurface construction will unearth underground nests, but so far we've seen none of that. We are doing dust control. We're using calcium chloride, which is like a salt substance spread on the road to keep the dust down. We also have a water truck on site to spray the material to keep the dust down. I know it's dusty out there, but we're doing everything we can to keep the dust to a minimal as possible. Finally, we have a couple resources. There is a website for this project. It's on the City of Somerville website, www.somervillemass.gov/Beacon Street. And this page has updates with construction schedules and information about the project. And any complaints or issues can also be brought to the attention of the City of Somerville at the 311 number. And we have had complaints through 311. They get to me immediately, so we will respond to it. If there is a complaint, we will investigate and we'll address it as best we can. Sometimes factors mean you can't get to it right then, but we try to do as best we can as far as issues go. And that is our presentation. I'm going to open this up for questions now.
All right, well, I'm going to start just with more of the mobility questions. Can everyone hear me? Is that doable? I guess one question came up from a constituent, and please, whoever wants to answer, I think we have a mic, but I think the acoustics in here are fine. One of the questions was, are there sidewalk plans for in front of of this building, actually, south side of Beacon between Museum Street and Park Street?
Short answer is yes. There are. It won't be as wide as the far side. The retaining wall pushes into the roadway a little bit, so the sidewalk on this side is 5 feet. The sidewalk on the other side varies from 10 feet to 8 feet. That's the smallest. But there's sidewalk on both sides of the property.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. Another mobility, and actually gets into more of the design. This one has to do, someone had put a question, will there be a traffic light constructed at the corner of Oxford and Beacon? There are lots of near misses with traffic here.
There's no traffic light proposed there, but that intersection, which is very wide and at a kind of a weird angle, is going to be narrowed and squared up. So you might say right at the end of the project, the crossing for pedestrians and bicycles will be much shorter, and the car travel path will be much more clear.
Great, thank
That's
you.
why can everybody hear?
Is that okay? Another question, design. I'm just going to go with some design and then move on to some other construction ones. Someone had mentioned light fixtures, benches. Are these included in the design?
Benches, yes. Light fixtures, no. There's currently some street lighting, but it's on utility poles. That'll be maintained. But there aren't pedestrian style lighting along the roadway like on Broadway.
Another design question, mobility question. The question is, any discussion with the City of Cambridge about extending the cycle track or separated bike lane towards Kendall Square?
There was
Please, Wayne, why don't you kind of start off with the historical stuff, and then we can talk a little bit about the more recent conversations, particularly in light of Amanda's death this summer.
Sure. During design, which is probably a 2-year process or so, we had many community meetings, both public as well as meeting with the City of Somerville and the City of Cambridge together. Lots of back and forth during those discussions. There's lots of different perspectives on what is the best use of public right-of-way. And I think what we came up with in the end is something that everyone felt comfortable with. It was a more even distribution of the right-of-way. Prior to the project, the right-of-way was really just available for vehicles and for pedestrians, with some sections of bike lane that were not really standard width. I think in the end it's a good compromise. If the project were more rural, probably could have extended the cycle track a little more. But because it's so urban and there are various businesses and residences around, we're limited on how much of an impact we wanted to have on parking in particular and things like that.
Yeah, this summer, obviously everybody's aware that there was an awful tragedy that's really shaken us all up. And so we've been anticipating this question, of course. And Jennifer and I sat down recently with our counterparts in the City of Cambridge, and of course they have been going through a community process for redesign around Inman Square itself for the last, 6 months. In light of what's happened, obviously we wanted to say, hey, where are you guys at with this? What are you hearing from your constituents? What are you hearing from your public safety officials, your traffic engineers, and so on and so forth? They are advancing some concepts through a community process. They're, in a normal situation, probably a year or two away from construction, although our counterparts told us that the City Council in Cambridge has asked them to fast track their work. So it's been a couple of weeks now since we've talked with those folks on this subject. We can check into the latest and greatest about Beacon Street. But one of the important things that Jennifer, who's our street design expert in my office, has always talked about is continuity among facilities is really, really important, right? And you don't want to dump people from a high-quality facility into a low-quality facility. And you also don't want to have a facility that's designed that's incompatible with, as Wayne said, some of the land uses, driveways and curb cuts matter, bus stops, utility conflicts. So knowing that we have a design, that we've worked through all those design questions, we felt that it was important not to immediately, make broad general statements and say, you know what, we're going to try to extend this facility the way it's previously done. It's not the same corridor. As many of you will tell us, what south of Washington Street is different than what's north of Washington Street. Jennifer, would you care to chime in on that question specifically? I think that we're in an ongoing dialogue with residents, with neighbors, with MassDOT and the City of Cambridge, but at this time there's no deviation from the base plan.
I think right now we're in constant communication. Obviously, we all know transportation is not just focused in one jurisdiction. We know there's connectivity. We have to play teammates with our city officials in Boston and Somerville and Malden and Medford. And so I think the conversation is going to continue. We really appreciate Cambridge actually having the conversation with us, and hopefully we can get more time to chime in, not only as officials but also residents and constituents that live here too. So I think it's going to come. It's a question that's still out there, and I think right now we at this time want to get this project, a high quality project for Beacon, finished. And so I think we're at this time where we know that there's long midterm planning. We all know transportation planning. We want to get this 2-year project. We want to get it done, but at the same time, we have to plan for the future, and we are looking at 5, 10, 15, 30-year plans. And so this is something that we're constantly dealing with on a daily basis. So please keep these types of questions going. I think these are things that connecting with your older people, connecting with people that are going to get you the answers, but also coming to meetings like this and mentioning these, because we're getting these every day. So again, thank you for mentioning those. And again, with Cambridge, we're trying to keep as transparent and open communication with them as possible. Hopefully we can play well with them and make it so it's not just a city facility, it becomes a regional connection to and from Boston and other places. So to keep things rolling, I think there was only one more design, more doing with what's on the sheets of paper that we're working with, and obviously contractors are looking at. One question was here, has to do with trees. So obviously trees are very important for the city of Somerville. We know that we know that we want to get more trees planted here. So one of the questions was just, what's the size of the new street trees that we're getting?
So there's several varieties of street trees. They have different diameters
For those, I would say in general, they're between 2.5 and 3.5 inches. We always like to put in larger ones, but during design, it's one of the discussion topics we have with the state each time.
And, I'm relatively early in my knowledge about urban forestry, but one of the things I've heard from some of the arborists that the city works with is that it's always very exciting for folks like us to say, you know what, we should invest the extra couple $100 per tree and get a more mature tree and drop it into that pit. But one of the things that the arborists have told us that I've been interested to learn is that there's a bit of a shock, a transplant shock that occurs, and it's more exacerbated with the bigger trees. And so studies have been done that suggest that given the right planting mediums, the right size, and the right care, we've all learned over the years that planting a tree is like a 5-year commitment. It's not just drop it in there and hope for the best. It requires care and feeding. It requires young tree pruning. It requires constant maintenance to avoid vehicle strikes and vandalism and 100 other things, right? Road salt. But studies have been done that show that a 3-inch tree, as Wayne's describing, compared with a 5-inch tree, 5 years in, 10 years in, are actually at kind of the same growth state, because the younger, smaller tree, I'm not talking about 1-inch lollipops, I'm talking about a normal 3-inch type tree, actually gets through its root shock and its transplant shock phase a little quicker than the average larger caliper tree. So there's a couple hundred new plantings up and down the corridor?
At least, yeah.
190, awesome. The city is really trying to learn the best in practice. Cambridge has a great urban forestry program. Somerville's a good one. We're trying to get to that level of great that our neighbors in Cambridge have. So taking good care of these trees once they're planted is really front and center in our mind right now.
Great, thanks, Brad. Just because we have a half hour here, I have some ones that are more associated with construction, dust control, but I want to, at least for the next few minutes, and I'll time it, I want, if people want to raise their hands, anything in regards to the design, mobility, safety, I think it's a good time to have your questions, and then we'll start in the back over there.
Yes, just kind of follow up on a point that was made. Is there a rough timeline for the construction of the sidewalks? Do you know which time will be done first?
We're not doing any sidewalks until we're into phase 3 drainage, so we didn't want to choke the area anymore with another work zone. So we wanted to get, once we're paved to Park Street, we're looking to do a half in phase, 1,500 feet, left side first, starting from the new hotel project, heading down towards Sacramento. That'll be where we'll probably start, most likely.
So left as you're looking toward Inman?
Yes, you're coming as you're looking towards it in the left-hand side. So we'll be doing that first, and then once that is complete, then we'll jump to the other side, and we'll bite them off in 1,500-foot sections. But we won't move to the next side until that is complete and done. So there's always a passable right-of-way for pedestrians.
And based on weather constraints, I can't see you getting much past Sacramento this fall.
Right, I mean, you obviously, you're not going to pour concrete in the winter, so it's just, so whether, if we get a good summer, winter like last winter, you obviously we'll bite off more of it, but, we can't really control that.
Sorry, Adam, I screwed up the full screen. Fixing that for me. Thanks.
Thanks for your question. Front?
The paving that's being done in the next month and a half or so, it says between Oxford and Park.
Yes.
Is that a temporary pavement layer?
No,
or is that a
that
permanent one?
is permanent. That is the
So that would
permanent.
be suitable for riding a bike on?
Yes.
Well, I guess then you run right into the next construction zone if you actually tried to ride down it.
Yes, it is. It's permanent pavement, but it's not the final layer.
Oh, okay.
You'll be riding on what we call binder layer, which is cars drive on it. It's pretty good. It's very passable.
But the detour is still recommended during that time.
Because then, as soon as you get to Park, you'll be hitting a new open section of roadway.
Okay, got it.
And so if anybody's not familiar with these diagrams that Jennifer and Adam had prepared working with Newport and MassDOT, we're really proud of them. It's a little different than the city has traditionally done on other big jobs recently, like East Broadway or like Somerville Avenue. So we're trying to spread the word through, social networks. The stuff's all online. But, we really are recommending that folks on bikes strongly consider detouring.
Yeah, there's going to be some shifting, and obviously I want to give kudos to the bike committee. They actually helped they were part of the reason why the detours were pretty well prepared for this construction project, and working in unison with the design group to really find a hybrid version or something that we could use that actually looked at the desire lines and how people are riding, because obviously detour routes are not going to fit everyone's need and comfort, and that's something that we knew that going in. And obviously other people are finding other ways to get to their places, oftentimes, based on what they feel comfortable with. So obviously these are ones that we're posting now. We definitely want to take your feedback, particularly if you are a bike commuter and or pedestrian. I think pedestrians, those are things that we want to hear from you too, and people that drive. And so, we want that feedback. We don't know everything. Everyone knows that this is a constant shift, constant going back and forth and reassessing. So we do take your feedback seriously. So if it's through me, through Brad, through 311. 311 is a great way because it actually gets, there's a record and it gets brought to whoever is in charge of that project. So please make sure to use 311. The guy in the gentleman in the yellow.
Yeah, this is following on that. You had mentioned that there was the construction in Union Square as well. So the way that I would go, what's the new construction number would be for Union Square? Is there a schedule for when that's going to be done?
The MWRA's work, which we were really disappointed by, they did the work last year, as folks will remember, a 3-week full closure of Webster Ave, and they didn't build their water main correctly, or their contractor or designer didn't. So they're redoing that job. The water main failed its pressure testing, so it's in the midst, or the first week of its 3-week closure right now. So we've been working with the city's traffic engineer, our counterparts in the city of Cambridge, and asking folks to, if you have the choice and if you feel comfortable with it, get down Somerville Avenue to Midford Street. That's not my favorite section as a 12-month bicycler, but it is an alternative if you're trying to get to East Cambridge or downtown.
You got diverting into Prospect?
No. Prospect is still one way northbound.
The feasibility of having a parked car and a bike lane switching, so that the parked car is actually between traffic and bike lane, and the bike is actually between the sidewalk and the parked car. Why is that not used as a weight-saving separate bike facility?
Wayne, was that type of cross-section investigated when we were doing the design and the community process 5 years ago?
The reason that sure. Okay, so the question was, south of Washington, there's no cycle track on either side. Instead, there are bike lanes. From the center line out, there's a travel lane, and then a bike lane, and then parking in the sidewalk. So the question was, why couldn't the bike lane or the parking be pushed to the other side of the bike lane to make a protected bike lane, right? So that when you're bicycling, you're not near moving vehicles, right? Instead, you're next to a parked car. The way that MassDOT has a design guide, and it stipulates lane widths and shoulder widths. And if that were moved, it wouldn't constitute a shoulder width. So we couldn't do it, is the short answer. There's not, the right-of-way is not wide enough to do that without losing additional parking. We'd have to lose parking on one side of the road to do that.
However, that is an emerging technique, and we're looking into it in other corridors throughout Somerville where you have a little bit more flexibility to work with. Has Cambridge used that approach yet anywhere? Jennifer, do you know off the top of your head? Just not Amesbury.
I mean, it's something that, it's definitely out there. MassDOT did just come out with a separated bike lane facility drive. Again, they're not standards. I want to use that clearly. They're guidelines. It's an evolving thing that's happening in our field right now. But yeah, I think just keeping on topic, the city is looking at separated bike lanes where parking is actually going to be used as separation. Mind you, that is happening in this project. But just to let you know that these are ongoing conversations that we're having, and we're hoping to look at some possibilities in some of our streets that are a little bit wider. We have some great width in some of our wards that we can do stuff like this, and you'll be seeing hopefully some conversation in public process for some of those streets in the near future. So thank you for raising that question. I'm going to take two more kind of on mobility and design, and then I'm going to jump into more construction.
At what phase will we see the reconfiguration of the Oxford Beacon intersection, the team of that?
That will be part of the sidewalk work, part of that realignment is new curb line and new realignment of curb line. So once we get paved through, we'll fall back once the sidewalk work starts. That will kind of reshape that intersection.
So Steve, is that this fall?
Yes.
Knock on wood?
Hopefully.
Awesome.
But yes.
I'm going to take some questions over here. Anyone have any mobility question over there?
I guess what is going to be the city's commitment to maintenance of all of this as far as life safety, light policing, and of course the trees and everything going forward? Because everyone on the street knows right now that there's been kind of not a huge amount of attention given to the street over the years, and that part of the business has gotten kind of in this disrepair. And also, you know, the pits, the overgrowth, all of that is happening now. So you're adding 200 more trees. So I just am curious, is there a budget increase for Beacon Street going forward for the maintenance and repair, you know?
Yeah, so we get this question from a couple different angles. Thanks, Adam. One of them is actually, how are you going to plow snow on this separated cycle track facility? So the city is, purchasing specialized small plow equipment, not only for the Beacon Street cycle track, but for the community path. We're not out of the woods yet on the green line, the community path, but we're going to save this thing. The mayor and the Board of Aldermen have made a commitment to actually own the maintenance as part of our partnership with MassDOT on that project. So we're purchasing that kind of equipment. On tree issues, I'm delighted to say that for the first time in, again, the 9 years that I've been here, we're hiring a city staff arborist who's going to be part of our department. We're totally excited about it. Kudos to the Board of Aldermen who's been working and advocating for this change to our operations. It's not a silver bullet. It doesn't mean that in 2017 we're going to be perfect, but it's a step in the process as we build our internal capacity to work with DPW, to work with private utilities. I dropped a dime this morning on my commute from West Somerville, seeing Eversource crews out doing tree trims. And I've heard from our superintendent of lights and lines, the city uses a 5-foot clearance maximum as Eversource and its contractors do trims around trees. They want 15. That's their standard across the state. They butcher trees. They absolutely butcher them. So next time you're out and about, you can see these awful giant V-cuts historically. We try to hold the line with them, but it's a tricky thing, right? It requires constant maintenance. And so having a staff arborist who can go out there when that 311 work order comes in and very quickly say, whoa, 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 you folks are not adhering to the city's standard. That's an example of how we're hoping to try to grow our capacity in some of these areas. There are others. The Board of Aldermen and the Mayor have asked us to get a citizen-based, community-based forestry program going, a citizen forester or kind of tree ranger program. Lots of other cities have done this, so we're starting to do the kind of the legal research so that folks can volunteer. We just put out a couple of community notes with the drought saying, hey, residents we can't be everywhere. The city can't be everywhere. Can you potentially consider watering some of these trees during this drought condition? So there's a variety of kind of stewardship items that we're committed to. Is it going to be, wave a magic wand and everything's perfect in 2017? Absolutely not. But incremental process year by year. And again, the Board of Aldermen has given us the resources that we need. They're asking us what resources that we need as city staff to get parking control, to get the speed details and studies, to do the plowing and the maintenance, the street lamps, the street trees. So we're very committed to taking care of this world-class facility.
And then just to add to Brad, these conversations are currently happening. So conversations regarding maintenance of the light facility, of the actual, of the trees, of the landscape. Also looking at parking and looking at kind of, looking at the parking plans and working with Marion on that. So we have a lot to do this winter. We're not going to be, falling asleep because construction is halted. The city will be continuing to work on planning out for the 2, 3, 4 years outside of this project. So when we think about best practices, and I'll add this, is right now a lot of cities are trying to figure out how do we maintain, cycle tracks, separated bike lanes. And so I really kudos to our DPW department to even think of the fact that we're already ahead of the game by having the equipment ready. Obviously, we'll have to work with DPW on some training, some best practices of what other cities are doing, and we're looking to even people in Canada. There's a lot of great things that are showing, they get a lot of snow up there. So we want to make sure this facility is open. We want to make sure the roadway is safe for all users. And so this is constant communication that we'll be working with this winter. Particularly, I think it's the most opportune boom time for us, knowing that construction and our schedules are a little bit more, right now, construction time, we're being pulled in every direction. So I wanted to add that and our commitment to that conversation. I know there might be some more questions about mobility or design on the street, but I wanted to make sure I answer some questions that people did put up on the board. And speaking of drought, this is maybe more of the dust questions that I knew we were going to get. What can be done to mediate the dust and address the consequences of health concerns? And this is the question someone had put on the board here.
Well, we are monitoring dust conditions on a daily basis. We have 3 on-site engineers. We do, like I said, use calcium chloride, and we have a water truck on site right there. Obviously, if dust conditions get bad, we're going to have to spray it more often. We didn't intend to have this much roadway opened up at one time. Construction conditions kind of force the situation, but we're going to try to maintain it as best we can. And if things get bad, we will take care of it. We'll do what we can. But there always will be a little bit of dust. You can spray it all day, but there's still going to be a little bit. So.
Rich, can you add to the process, just like in terms of what do you do? What is that process to actually help with the dust? I know for me, this is a learning thing. So what are those steps that you're doing on site?
Well, calcium chloride, it's like a salt material that you spread all over the material, and it kind of keeps it packed down, makes it hard. And typically that's one of the items that we use, but we spray water too, because even after you do that, it's been so dry lately that we'll have this water truck just go up and down the street just spraying water, just try to keep everything wet and dust-free as best we can.
And that's post-construction on a daily? Or is
Yes.
that something that's yeah.
We usually do, we will make a run with the water truck first thing in the morning, so anything we disturb, we'll have some water on it so the dust won't be flying. And then at the end of the day, is usually when we spread calcium on any new material we put down and roll that, so nothing, once traffic starts hitting it, it tends to keep the dust down. It works pretty well.
Does anyone else have questions about dust, air quality, any of those?
Based off of what, this year was supposed to be kind of paved and not got a lot of dust, but because of the underground pipes and everything, this happened. So what you've learned about the street now, is this what we should expect for the south side of the street next? Or do you still think that you'll be able to do a little spot at a time?
Well, our intention is to have everything paved up to Calvin Street by early November.
South of Washington?
Yes, that'll take you just past south of Washington. The last section, Calvin to Dixon, it'll be similar. We'll have to open that up completely.
Okay, so it will be the same, so because of what you learned about the underground gas lines and everything.
Yes.
You're gonna have to, you won't be able to do a little at a time, you'll have to rip up the entire road at once.
Right now, you're probably in the worst situation you can imagine, because we have 3,000 feet opened up, pavement stripped. And as the next sections, it'll be half of that. Going from Park to Calvin will be 1,500 feet, and then going from Calvin to Dixon is 1,500 feet, so there won't be that much road opened up. It'll be about half of what you have right now.
So it'll be like half and half of what's
Yeah.
next year, so it won't be as bad as this.
It won't be as bad. But like I said, we can accelerate our watering schedule. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll try to keep the dust down as best we can.
Understands that, once you dug down there, you got it down.
Any other questions regarding, all right, we'll just leave it open. I mean, right now, it seems like everyone's answered, questions are being answered. Alderman?
So thank you for saying you're going to be more diligent about the water, because it's been a really dry summer, and I know when I walk down the other section of the street, it's really dry, dusty, and if the wind blows up, it's terrible. But the other question I have is about, do you ever go out with a street sweeper? Because I've noticed, I've noticed like some of the side streets, it's kind of going onto the side streets, a lot of the dust and the gravel. Do you do street sweeping? Because I know in some other projects, like the Summer Lab project, they tried to keep some of the other areas clean.
We do street sweeping, and I'll take a look at it. We can probably do something along those lines.
I think that would be good, people who are out on the street, because,
Well, what you're going to see after this rainstorm we had today, there's going to be mud tracked up the street, and that's going to dry. So we'll try to get that too.
And there's a woman who couldn't make it tonight, but I promised her I would ask this question. She was closer to the coffee shop on Beacon Street on the other side. She has a driveway. And she said that, she knows that, there are areas that were dug up, and then another day there was gravel there, so she felt like, oh, I'm going to be able to get in and out of my driveway and out of my house, and then, the next week after that, it dug up again, and she's just wondering, what can she expect, like, to be able to, access her property? Is it, when she sees the gravel there and she sees it's kind of cleaned up, is that her sign that there's not going to be any more construction in front of her property?
Yeah, we're committed to keeping access to driveways at all times, except when we're actually digging at that point. So when she sees gravel, that's her temporary driveway until we get around to actually restoring the driveway. And
is there a worker who works on site that if somebody has the
yes, there are 3 MassDOT engineers on site. They wear the MassDOT hard hats and vests.
In addition to DCI, who serves as the city's owner's rep, and so Wayne and a couple of his colleagues are down there every day as well as field engineers for us. But again, this is an important question. This got raised, pretty early in the process where all of a sudden there was, call it 8 or 10 inches of a gap between somebody's driveway apron and that base surface. And I think it was early enough that we were, fighting fires with the gas company and trying to figure everything out a month ago. And so we heard about this from residents and we called up the field engineer from MassDOT. And he, worked with Steve and immediately just, brought in a couple of truckloads of kind of coarse gravel and reduced that 8-inch gap that literally a normal vehicle, couldn't get over into a driveway. And 3 hours later, we had solved that problem. So I kind of panicked and really appreciated the rapid response that these guys were able to get us.
What's her name and address? I'll take it down and maybe we can have one of my guys talk to her. Okay. Okay. You get that to me and we'll go on. We'll talk to her.
I have a question about crosswalks, because when it was wonderful to have repaving last week, but crosswalks were there. When are they going to come in? And since it's not going to be the final paving that you do this fall, will the crosswalks be?
Yeah, we'll put temporary lines out, just painted lines. It won't be the permanent crosswalks. Yeah, the permanent crosswalks actually have the granite pavers and so on.
But there will be crosswalks.
Yes, paint.
And will they be at all the new places as well, or just would it have been?
The new places, because sidewalks will be in.
Right.
They'll be at the new places, the new locations.
Because the sidewalks will be in the curb as well.
That's right, yes.
Just to follow up on that, is that, so I get these questions too, so I'm sure maybe some of you are thinking that. So in terms of, we're talking about crosswalks, does that also include the conditions prior with bike lanes and sharrows in those locations using paint? Do you know if that?
There'll be temporary striping for sure.
Temporary striping, yeah, and I knew that I just want to make sure, because I'm sure that question will be fielded, so.
I think what we should probably explain a little bit so everyone can expect what to see for the duration of the project. Paving will start next week. That paving will be from existing curb to existing curb. Okay, those curb lines are not where they're going to be in the end. So they'll be paved, and I assume we'll be able to park and have a travel lane. Okay. As construction goes on, and the sidewalks will be done, when the sidewalks are done, that'll push the curbing to its final location. Okay. Once the sidewalk, say in front of your house, is completed, that means the cycle track will be in front of your house, but it still won't have the final paving on it, because we're going to do the final paving at the very end. The last inch and a half or so will be one kind of long run. So to answer the question about the gravel in front of the house, once the sidewalk in front of your house is done, the majority of the work is done. There's one more paving that will come through at the very end, which will be the final paving with the thermoplastic striping and the final crosswalks.
I do have one more question that someone did post up there, and this has to do with parking. And that question is, and I'm assuming this is what the question meant, and if the person's still here, please correct me, is basically, this has to do, I think, with overall parking loss for the project. We know the numbers, we all know like there is going to be some parking loss. I guess the question here is when are those spots planning to be removed? So when are we going to see the actual, is that your question? I just wanted, so your question was, why don't you ask?
I know that eventually the sort of end of the project, there'll be about roughly 100 spots that will no longer be there because of the
So we're losing it on
cycle
paper,
traffic.
right?
Just wondering when we can anticipate sort of the loss of those spots, basically. What's the timeline on that?
The existing parking, once we pave next week, it'll be in the new configuration, the width of the road, so those parking spots are gone.
I think it's.
Right, but the final curb line that you guys were just talking about.
Basically after the crosswalks.
That would be next year, right?
Yeah, so we're talking about the end result, the 2-year result of what parking is going to look at that point. And so you're saying you want to know when that's actually going to happen, when those 100, give or take, parking spots are going to be gone. I think that was the question more so having to do with the end result of the project, not the current parking
Yes.
weaving that we're going through right now. Do you feel comfortable? Do you want to add anything else to your question or the answer? Any other questions? I mean, we have 1 minute, but I just want to take another question over there.
Yeah, this is going back to the trees, and I know that you guys are not growers, so could somebody get information on the website about what kinds of trees are planted?
I actually have the list up here if you want to look at it after the meeting.
Are the plans posted, Greg?
Yes, they should be, but if it's difficult to navigate to them, as it sometimes is with the old website, we can repost it in a cleaner location.
One of the last sheets. These are like the individual pages.
Whoever the
Summary.
person or people were that advocated to get that layer of asphalt last fall.
I think these are.
Went
Those are
down
the totals.
immediately. It was wonderful.
Yeah, that's total.
So let me give credit where credit's due. Not only Alderman Houston, but the city's DPW commissioner really were pushing that hard. And as I mentioned earlier in my remarks, MassDOT had every right to say, guys, we're about to build an $11 million job over the next 2 years. We can't find the money, and it doesn't make sense. And to their credit, they said, we want a safe, accessible condition in the interim. Again, kudos to them, and thanks, Rich, to you and your team and your leadership at the district for finding the money, for listening to our officials, our elected officials, and our public officials to say, we just got to get through this winter, so thank you.
I have a question related to that, actually. When will the end of Museum Street be there? Because that's been terrible for Museum Street.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring this up. I was going to mention this earlier with one of the other comments. So the city has its own standard resurfacing program where we move around the city. And it's very funny because sometimes people ask us, well, geez, we have this awful condition. Part of my commute is Medford Street from Magoon Square down to Gilman Square and School Street. And it's awful. And so people often will say, why are certain streets being resurfaced and not others? The ones that I see being resurfaced don't look like they're completely failing like Beacon Street was last year. And that's kind of the state that Medford Street's starting to get into. What we actually try to do, the pavement management science has evolved in a way where you realize that there's what's called a depreciation curve. So you put down new pavement and things kind of depreciate at a relatively slow slope for the first few years, and then it falls off precipitously. Really, really precipitously. And what the science has started to evolve, and the way that the city's DPW and the mayor's office has started to work, is to say, $1 invested before you reach that fall off on the curve saves you like $6 in the long run. So we actually are doing preventative maintenance, crack sealing, micro surfacing over top of the surfaces, and that means that streets like Medford often are struggling for a little bit longer until they get their full depth reconstruction. So why is this relevant to Museum? We have done, quantitative analysis of Museum and of Forest and 100 other of the small blocks, many of them that are only in Somerville's jurisdiction for 50 feet, right, and before they get across the city line in Cambridge. And the mayor and the city's DPW leadership said, you know what, MassDOT's going to be down on site. Let's take advantage of the fact that this stuff is all mobilized and do those skim coats, those micro seals now, if possible. So that was our plan, to be in with our standard city contractor to do those resurfacing on Museum and others this summer. Things have changed a little bit with the gas company and the unforeseen circumstances, and one of the things that Jennifer and I will take back to the shop as a homework assignment is to try to figure out what are the implications for Museum, for Forest, and Sacramento and Kent and everything else that was anticipated to have those small preventative maintenance.
Then Cambridge did Sacramento. But
Okay.
Museum, Cambridge only did up to the Cambridge board.
Right,
and
right.
It's terrible.
Even when I lived there in the 90s, there's worse now.
Yeah, it's been touched since.
My guess is that you're going to see those streets resurfaces per the plan this construction season. So probably in the fall as opposed to the heart of the summer, which is where.
But it won't necessarily be part of the Sacramento Park Street, because it falls in there, that's what Museum is.
Right, right.
But they did the sidewalks, somebody's redone the museum sidewalks.
No, I think all those cross streets, if they're in lousy condition, we have a contractor who's contracted to fix them up this year, as long as we can get them in and out safely with the rest of the job.
I live at 341 Beacon Street, and I understand the problem with the clay and everything, but my question is, yesterday, they dug up the whole area there by Forest Street, in front of my house, not accessible to my driveway or anything, and then they paved it. And then this morning, they came up again, it's like Groundhog Day, they dug the whole freaking thing up again. It's not funny, the house is shaking, there's so much dust on my windows I can't see outside, and they screwed up, so they had to come back and do it all over again. But this is like the third time now that they've done it. So my question is, who is responsible for the oversight on these jobs? That they're somehow not getting the job done right the first time. It's number one. And the other thing I want, since I've got the floor here, is I just want to talk about the rodent problem and the rat problem that we have in our backyard and many of my neighbors. And we had the guy from the city come, he said definitely you got to put traps. He's going to exterminate. If we pay the city for a year for this extermination that we did not cause, and because the sewers are no longer on the road, they're not trapping the sewers because they're non-existent. So we need some relief. We need them to come up and put traps around the train and the back of our houses, because this is totally unacceptable and we didn't cause this problem. And I really think something should be addressed about that.
That's you, Steve.
So basically what happened was, it was all excavated down to a certain subgrade, the gravel level. So that was basically where we were going to start building the road up from. We ran into the utility issues where we couldn't do anything with the gas that was existing there. So we made a determination that we were going to build up off existing gravel. We were originally supposed to put another 8 inches, and we're not doing that. So what we did yesterday is we put down, what we did yesterday wasn't paving, we were putting down dense grade, which is what you pave on. So it's basically the sub-base of the, so what we could do where there's good material.
No, they did put pavement down. I mean, they put
It was,
gravel.
no, it was gravel. It's a stone.
Yeah.
It's a 3/4 inch dense graded. So what's basically is that gets good compaction, then you pave on top of that. That's your basic sub-base. So that's what we did.
They put those posts last week.
Right, so basically what we were doing today is there were some pockets of bad material that Wayne spoke of earlier, of clay material that we had to go in and get. Because if you build up off of that, the road will fail, within months. You get traffic on it, the clay will settle and you'll get ruts and the road will be just as bad as it was, not as bad, but it'll be bad again. So we had to chase those materials today in order to get that layer on dense grade so we can get paving on Monday. So it wasn't paving, it was basically putting that dense grade down so we can pave on Monday. Today we were getting the clay material out, bad material, but replace it with good material so our sub-base will be suitable for paving. So that was.
Is your driveway accessible today, or do we need to?
After the work it was.
Okay.
We usually, anytime we go past the driveway, we make sure that there's a temporary ramp, there's some sort of material there where we
They
can
did
get.
do that.
Yeah, that we never leave a driveway that nobody can get in overnight. Everything is always taken care of. Whether it's a side street, driveway, it's always ramped before we leave. We always make sure of that.
Yeah.
And as we come up, obviously the ramps will be much shallower because, we're coming up in elevation, the difference is better, so, much less, so those ramps will be a little less severe as we go.
My partner has a back problem, she's a senior citizen, and a heart problem. So this aggravation has been really overwhelming to her. And I appreciate that you did the driveway today, but they don't always do it every day. Like a couple of days ago, there was a big trench there. And I have a sedan, So, and these are things that you should be doing, I'm going to pat you on the back for saying you filled in the driveway, This is a total inconvenience. It's gone on much longer than they said originally, you know, and that's it.
We apologize for that. I don't know if you heard, but we are paving in front of your house starting next Monday. You'll get the roadway back next week. Your question on rodent control, we do have a rodent control program out there. We are setting traps up and down Beacon Street. We are monitoring it. I'll make a note that you did see rodents.
A lot of my neighbors do. I mean, they
Okay.
just-
We'll put some additional traps down that end of Beacon Street.
And you say something, right? Continue to do it, sir?
Yes.
Yes.
You continue to do it
Yes.
consistently until this project's done?
Yes.
Thank you.
We obviously know that subsurface excavation can disturb rats, and they will come out of their hiding spots, so to speak. So, yes, until we're done, rodent control program stays in place.
And one of the things we talked about earlier was, 311 continues to be a really important way for us to track data. So if you see a rodent, call 311, even if it seems redundant, even if you've called your alderman, even if you've called the staff, even if you've talked to the field staff from MassDOT or from DCI, still call 311. We collect data on this stuff. It's really, really important.
And we're held accountable for that. I mean, we have these staff meetings where we do see the data, and we are being pushed by the mayor's office that we need these. And so that's why it's so important. And I tell this, I work as a liaison for the bike committee, and I know oftentimes there's a lot of frustrations on the streets. We know that there's a lot of areas where we could be doing better, but hearing from people and actually having it not just come through an email to my email box or call, is that 301 really makes a difference, and it allows us to actually come and talk to our alder people and talk to our leaders and say, there's a problem here and we need to do something about it. So thanks again for your patience, ma'am, and I know that there's a lot of frustrations going on, and we appreciate you coming out tonight on a rainy, humid day. I do want to make note that we'll be doing these, we'll be talking with Alderman Houston about setting up these and thinking about what the timing of these might be. If this space works, we might think about other locations, but we want to make sure that at least on a seasonal basis, but we'll be working also more closely with our Economic Development Division. As we know, as the project progresses, we know, and I don't know if there's any small business owners here or owners of businesses on Beacon, we know that's going to be a lot of questions that are going to come their way. And so we're going to make sure that Economic Development is going to be more involved with that, doing some walkthroughs, meeting people, having coffee talks. Like, we don't want to make it so, we tried some drop-in times and we're realizing it's going to have us, we're going to have to walk the streets and talk to businesses and residents. So please stay forth for those changes. And also, if you have any recommendations, again, we're up for your thoughts. I mean, we know that you live here, you work, you play here, you do everything on this street, and we want to make sure that if there's anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to traffic and parking, T&I, and we'll make sure that at least your question is answered to the best of our ability. So thank you for coming.
Could I just ask, just to get the dates right again? And just so everyone knows, that I'm hoping to repeat one more meeting before this kicks in. And if people think that this is an okay location, I know it's tough walking here, but this should be paid for next time. But if this is an okay location, everybody like this location? Yeah. Isn't it nice? Thank you. Thank you very much. We're very appreciative that you guys, we have no meeting space on Beacon Street. But anyway, just the dates. So what's up there is that, next week, that roadway will be paved, that section from Roseland to Sacramento, correct?
Yes. Yeah, and obviously it's based on weather permitting, other things, but I'll have that.
And then just what was the part about the sidewalks? When will that be done?
Well, I'll walk you through the schedule as it stands today. We're going to pave.
Take the microphone
And also then we will want to know, the dedicated bike lanes. So can you give us those kind of dates for the sidewalks?
Okay, we're going to be paving from Roseland to Sacramento starting next week. And that's on schedule. The next section, which would be from Sacramento to Park Street, is scheduled for the first part of September, probably the first week. Our work is kind of contingent on what Eversource Gas is doing with their service relocations. They're basically, we have to wait for them to finish, then we can do our roadway work. But the first week of September looks fairly probable. At that point, it'll be paved, and we're going to take out the next section, which is Park Street to Calvin, which is just south of Washington. We're going to have that paved by early November, and also we will start sidewalk work after we finish paving up to Park Street, down near Roseland, near the development on the south side of Beacon Street.
So that's the sidewalk work, and that would be in September, I'm assuming.
That'll be in September.
And then what about the cycle, the dedicated cycle track? Is that coming?
That's going to happen with the sidewalks. That work will continue as weather allows, probably to early to mid-November when it gets too cold to pour concrete.
So what is your expectation about how much you will get done from Oxford down to Park between now and?
I mean sidewalks?
Sidewalk and cycle.
What do you, Sacramento?
I mean, I would hope, roadway will be completely paved. Sidewalks will hopefully be done both sides from Oxford to Sacramento, full to Sacramento. If we get a warm winter, we can probably, maybe extend out to maybe museum or another block or so. We'll take it as the weather comes.
And just so everyone is aware, roadway will be completely paved before winter, either old pavement or new. Sidewalks will be all covered, either new sidewalk or old, but there'll be nothing opened up before winter.
I want to make sure people are clear, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rich. Now, with the separated bike lane and the cycle track, when we talk about the construction happening, can you tell us a little bit, we're not raising, there's a curve involved there for separation, but can you speak to that? Because I know that's come up with emergency vehicles and access, so I want that to be clear so people understand what the facility will look like in 2 years versus the end of this season.
I'm going to let Wayne answer that.
Thanks.
At the end of this season?
Yeah, I think just understanding
Okay.
when we say cycle track and separated bike lane, just what that means at the end of the season and what it means for at the end of the 2 year, because I know there's an element there with a curve.
Sure. So the cycle track on the south side is at the same elevation as the sidewalk. It has a vertical curve that separates it from the parking. And on the other side of that parking lane is a travel lane, the crown of the road, and then the other travel lane. And then there'll be a cycle track, and then the sidewalk. That second cycle track, or the cycle track on the north side, is 6 feet wide. That cycle track will be done after the final paving. So at the end of this year, the cycle track on the south side will be complete, but the cycle track on the north side won't be there. It'll just be a striped bike lane for now.